So the other day I was in a team meeting and all of a sudden everyone started laughing and I thought, are they laughing at me? Because it seems like they're looking toward my side of a screen. And then I realized that there was a reason why they were laughing. And the reason being is that because I was in a meeting with managers, operational managers and so on, and I was drinking tea with these, with a goose holding a knife. And a cup that clearly states she has the temperament of a deranged goose. And it's one of my favorite cups, and I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. So at that point, I just decided to go with the flow, and I kept drinking my tea until I was done. But yeah, everyone had a good laugh. Hi everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Eva and today I am wrapping up the month of January, all the things that I have read. Before I do so, very quickly, if you have seen my life update videos, I had mentioned that I was supposed to start another course on top of my psychotherapy course, but there has been a plot twist and basically I'm not required to go to the other course anymore. That news came in and it's a bit of a relief in all honesty, because it would have been very intense, and I am already doing another master, so doing another diploma on top of everything would have become quite overwhelming. So now I am just working full-time and doing my master's in psychotherapy. So that's to say I'm still very busy, but I got a bit of more time to film and I can breathe. Most weeks I can breathe, not always, but so yeah, I will still link down below the video because I think overall it gives you like an overview of what my life has been and why I can't upload like every day, but yeah, that's to say I did have a few quiet days in January. Again, not having to start the other course gave me a bit of a breathing time. And finally, the other thing I want to say is that I've started this new thing now where I have a note on my phone for every book I'm currently reading, and as I read them, I jot down my thoughts if they are very strong thoughts. So what I do at the end, I just put them together at the end of the book and then do my Goodreads review, but also I will use those thoughts because they are fresh and they are throughout my experience of reading those books. I will pull those thoughts and share them with you in my review at the end of the month, because I think it's a bit more coherent way for me, and also it allows me to go into a bit more details, because a lot of the times if I was to write my thoughts only at the end of the book, I would miss a few nuances here and there of my experience throughout different points of the story. So long story short though, because I collect all of those thoughts in my Goodreads and Storygraph, I started Storygraph this year, my reviews here and my reviews on those websites are not going to be massively different. However, on those websites I might going to be more spoiler, which I will stay clear of in here. So yeah, without further ado, all my links are down below if you want to follow me on Goodreads or Storygraph. As always, this is going to be from my least enjoyable read to my most enjoyable read. It's difficult to put them in order. I've tried my best and I've read 7 things. So we're going to start at the 7th place and work our way to my most enjoyable read of the month. Overall, not a bad reading month, but when I sat down to compile this list, I thought that at number 7 I need to put Drowning. This is a thriller standalone and it's about a plane that shortly after taking off has an engine failure and it goes down into the ocean. And you then proceed to read what happens to a few survivors of a plane trying to get rescued and trying to survive while the plane is underwater. This is what it is. It's a rescuing operation, thriller if you want. So there's no bad guy or anyone, but it's literally humanity versus nature and surviving incredible odds. Now you want to hear a funny story with this. So a woman who has no phobias in life apart from going on a plane, okay? So said woman decides to read, or listen to in this case, to a book that's all about a plane going down in the ocean. So said woman proceeds then to cry at every single instance, every small event of this book, as if there was no tomorrow. The woman was an utter mess. She cried more listening to this than in any other book she has read in the past 5 years. And trust me, those are, the numbers are not low. She has read a lot in the past 5 years. Very deep, touching stuff, and did not make her cry as this one did. So said woman, she was an utter mess by the end of this book. And then the audiobook wraps up. And then the woman goes, oh, yeah, I guess that was just alright. So cheers. On the objective side, I think this thriller does the thrilling part quite well. Overall, it does what it promises in the synopsis. The tension is kept, events follow each other quite quickly, and therefore if you are into for a, feel like breathless ride, this is definitely one that I think delivers quite well overall. The prose also wasn't bad at all. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that in a thriller like this, the author still took the time to do some characterizations, at least to certain degrees. Audiobook narration was also alright. No big complaints there. So when I stepped back and I thought, why 3 stars? I think there were a few things I really enjoyed, and there were other things that were just okay. So nothing majorly negative. It was just okay most of the time. So what I really enjoyed was Will and his family and their story. You don't want to know what a mess it was throughout all those pieces, especially when we look at the past and what has led Will now to be on the plane with his daughter. So that was the highlights for me. I think at the end of the day, the 3 stars was mostly because, setting aside my being scared shitless of a potential scenario like this, it also must be said that scenarios like these have a very limited scope of what might happen, right? So that you are in a plane that has crashed, that you are underwater from the start, and that the rest of the book is about these people having like a lot of hiccups before some of them will make it out alive. That's the premise of the book. It's like when you read books such as Battle Royale or The Hunger Games, the premise comes in itself with you knowing pretty much how it's going to turn out to be. And especially in a book like this, I think there was no major surprise for me. Everything played out as I was expecting it to play out. So it was a lot of educated guesses that turned out to be true, that it can't become anything else of what it is. And I do definitely have an issue with limited settings books. You need to have an amazing prose or outstanding characters for me to really feel. And apart from the tragic story of Will, I thought the author definitely creates like small back histories of all the characters, most of the characters at least, to let us feel attached to them. There was not enough depth or enough time with them for me to really get attached to the point that this book blew my mind. The only thing that I found a bit silly overall was that at one point they come up with a plan to get out of the plane, and actually when they try out, the thing works. The easiest, most simple solution works, and then someone makes a mistake and they just decide that the whole thing has to be cancelled. And I'm like, you don't cancel an actual rescue plot that it's actually working because an idiot makes a lot of mistakes. So it would have worked if that guy had not done what he done, right? So the plan in itself is not wrong. You actually saved already someone that way. It's working. He clearly makes a mistake. So the fact that then the whole thing was scrapped, at least then the other side of the plot could come in, I thought it was very convenient and also not very realistic, because I can't see a rescue mission in real life failing or be cancelled because of human mistakes. You're told not to do something, and if you do it, then of course you're gonna feel the brunt of the consequences of you doing that. So that was one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But overall, it was okay. Do I want to read the other book by the author about a plane hijacking? Probably not. Probably it's one of the worst ideas I could have after having read a book about a plane going down in the ocean. So who knows though, I am full of bad ideas clearly. Number 6, The Creeper. This is the same author of The Watchers, and this is relevant, you'll see in a second why. But The Creeper is a standalone horror. So the premise of this is that you have a mysterious figure that hires a man and a woman to do some investigative jobs on his behalf. There's this village in Ireland that has been living far from society, far from any technological development, from any interaction with the actual outside world. And in this village, where people are mostly interbred and they live of the products of the earth, they have a belief. They believe in the creeper, this mysterious figure. And this guy that hires these other two people to do investigation is quite curious of finding out more about the creeper. So he hires this woman and this man that are academics to go to the village, get some informations out of the inhabitants of the village and come back to him with those informations. And the story really starts from there. Follow me with this, okay? So initially, I believed that the creeper was the follow-up to the Watchers. So I started listening to the audiobook and I kept saying, I don't see the connection here. I was just, but where is our main protagonist? This doesn't seem like the same creatures. So I wrote down in my thoughts as I was writing them, as I was listening to the audiobook, there is both excitement because I'm quite intrigued by what's happening. At the same time though, I can't help but being disappointed because I was expecting a direct sequel. I had questions that need answering. And then I finished the audiobook. I went on my Goodreads to write my whole review with a hint of enjoyed this quite a lot, but it's also disappointment because what's the story, the main story? Only to find out that it was only in my head that the creeper was the sequel to the Watchers. The creeper is not a sequel to the Watchers. That's called something else. This is just a standalone by the guy. And so my entire thoughts, the entire process of thoughts I had experienced while listening to this was based on a lie that I made up. So anyway, I think there were some things in common with the Watchers that made me enjoy these as well, or almost as much as the Watchers. I think I enjoyed the Watchers a bit more, but I really enjoyed this one as well. I like the prose of the author. I think it is very well at creating an atmosphere that transcends the pages. I think that this one, for example, was very true to its title. It was creepy, it was unsettling. I don't think it's necessarily a scary book, but when I was listening to certain scenes and imagining, trying to really immerse myself in the story, if I thought about that happening, I thought, oh, thank God this is just a book, because no way in hell I would have gone to that village. No, I'm not doing it. And there were also toward the end some scenes that were kind of hard for me to listen to. I was generally a bit gutted of the events that were taking place. I also liked of his books that there is always, yes, the horror elements, but it's also based on an investigation almost. So like, what's happening here? What is the lore behind? And it does feed you bits and bobs throughout the story. So by the end that you collect all the pieces and there is the big horror ending of where there is, it's quite effective. And it also kept my attention because I liked to put the pieces together. So there was also, so it's almost like a horror mystery story, and those are very effective for me. I found that I really enjoyed them. This is true for these. I must praise the audiobook narrator for these, which I don't know is. I'm gonna try to find the name. I really enjoyed how he narrates these, because I tend to listen to audiobooks while doing other stuff, and at no point I found myself distracted or my attention wandering. He really kept my attention there. And the cadence, how you pronounce it? I'm trying to put the word here, of his voice, it was very soothing but also very anchoring for me, and so I really was able to do stuff and my mind would still be with him following the story. Overall, it was good. Even if it's a 6th place, I still had a very good time with this. At number 5, I had the book that initially I had put at number 6. I was not sure between this and The Creeper which one. So I think enjoyment wise they're very similar, but I'm talking at number 5 about The Women of Troy by Pat Barker. This is a direct sequel to The Silence of the Girls. In the first book of his trilogy, I believe it's a trilogy, you follow Briseis, and sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, and she is captured by the Greeks as they arrive in Troy, on the shores of Troy, and she becomes a concubine against her will of Achilles. The focus on the first book is truly following Briseis' point of view of what's happening between the Greeks and Troy from the perspective of a woman that is kept prisoner in the Greek camps and has to deal with Achilles every single day. Now, finishing this book, what I wrote down was The Silence of the Girls a one-time wonder? Because overall, I think this is not up to that standard. In The Silence of the Girls, Parker does something I have never seen done before when it comes down especially to Greek retelling. She shows us, not only tells us, but shows us through her story that, you know, a story has two sides, and those two sides can be vastly, starkly different. And maybe that's just me, but before reading The Silence of the Girls, I had never considered the other side of the coin, the other way that this story could be perceived or experienced. For me, Achilles and the Greeks, maybe I've watched too many times. Troy the movie, fair enough. Brad Pitt doesn't help when it comes down to siding with Achilles. But jokes aside, I always seen the heroes. I had not thought of the perspective of women that were captured and kept as slaves, as sex slaves basically, from the heroes. So I was mind blown by The Silence of the Girls. I'm not saying this is the experience of everyone. Maybe you know, you have read it and it's like, yeah, I always thought about the other perspective. I hadn't, in my ignorance, I hadn't. So now in the second book, they showing us the other side of the coins continues, right? So we now, if you've read the first book, and I'm assuming that, you know, if you're interested in reading the sequels because you've read the first book, or you know, hopefully this review convinces you to read The Silence of the Girls, because it's a very good book. That we kind of know where we stand. We still follow Briseis in this. We are still in the Greek camp, and we know exactly what is the other side of the coin. Trying to stay spoiler free for now. The element of showing us the other side of the coin is not new anymore, which makes sense. This is a sequel, so it comes with, you know, the fact that it's a sequel, that's not new anymore. However, somehow I had thought that she would show us something new. She would open my eyes on something new, rather than keeping my eyes open on the same topic. And that's how I felt. I felt like, okay, you're giving more of what I already know is happening, which I don't mind reading, but somehow I had created those very high expectation of Barker, and I thought she was gonna blow my mind on something else, on a new topic that I had not considered, and she didn't. To be fair, those are my expectations that I put on her. She doesn't promise these, she doesn't owe us these. And I think that whether she's doing and keep showing us the other side of the coin is fundamental. So don't take my critique as, oh, she should have shared us something new, as something that she should have. It's something that I had expected of her. And as it wasn't there, I felt a bit like, oh, okay, like there's nothing new in here. But that's more on me, if you want. Now, said that, this book is still full of gut-wrenching moments. There are a few moments, and again, I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible, but we see Briseis now taking care of other women. They have to go through some of the things she has to go through in the first book. And I found those moments deeply touching and also extremely bittersweet, because there was the, you know, the sweetness of Briseis now taking care of someone else, but there was definitely the bitterness of this keeps happening, and all she can do is now taking care of you afterwards. And as someone who mostly reads fantasy where the female protagonist, not in all books, but in many books, the females, and especially our protagonists, somehow they have powers, or they are, you know, martial artists, or they can use weapons. Somehow the protagonist a lot of the times gets away without being victim of a lot of the things, because thanks to her power, or thanks to a combination of events, or someone else rescuing her at the last moment, she doesn't have to go through some of those experiences. She might have gone through in the past before we start the book, but it's a bit more rare. Set Game of Thrones aside, or you know, the Red Rising series, that's a different series. But in majority of the series, our main protagonist, the female protagonist in our books, gets away, or gets rescued, or rescues herself through magic, or you know, kicking asses. And it's very empowering to read, and that's what I'm more used to. This is a very different take. This is a very matter-of-fact, realistic take of this is what women have to go through. This is how we get overpowered physically. You know, if you are a bunch of women among trained soldiers, the reality is that they're gonna overpower you. They're gonna do of your body whatever they want to do. That's just the reality. And we might not like it, we might not like hearing it, but I like how Pat Barker doesn't shy away from showing us that yes, our bodies, especially when the odds are so against us, are not in our favor, and women get used, abused and beaten and whatever else. And she says this is just the reality of it. However, what they can't conquer is their minds, and that's where Barker shines through, showing us how they can conquer our bodies but not our minds, not always at least. And so I found that message still as true as in the first book, very potent, very strong in this second book, not only as women, but as humans in general, where we know the horrible things are happening right now and there is absolutely nothing we can do. And Barker transported me in those camps where, you know, Briseis or the other women knows that something horrible is happening right now, and all they can do is wait until it's over and try to do kindness, to try and, you know, wash or trying to do something for that woman who has just gone through that, because they can't stop it. They can just try and be kind afterward. And the range of emotions that you might experience, that, you know, in front of you being completely powerless to stop something, and yet trying at least to gain a bit of agency in trying to, you know, wash someone or just be with them afterward. That is the only power you at times can have. That is very intense to read, and she does an amazing job with that. I remain quite lukewarm toward Briseis overall. I think she's an acquired taste as a character. I found her, for example, her interaction with Cassandra, I found them quite judgmental. She tries to show us, you know, Cassandra in a bad light, although I've seen Cassandra only actually doing good or kind things for our toward other women. She might not do it with the attitude you like, Briseis, but she's still doing it. So go past the attitude, see what actually she's doing. So her judgment toward Cassandra, for example, rubbed me the wrong way a bit. At the same time, I do respect Briseis a lot, because I think she becomes very wise, and there is a lot of wisdom in her character in general. She's also quite good at not necessarily being able to prevent any harm, but she can, now that she spent time with these Greek warriors and with men in general in that situation especially, she can see now how they would react in different situations. So if I know that if their ego is hit and if they feel ashamed, then that's how they're going to react. And she kind of tries to take measures as much as possible to then prevent even, you know, bigger harms. So there is wisdom in her. She's just at times a bit judgmental. And I'm just waiting for the third book to come out in paperback, because I know that now we are moving to another point of view. So after 2 books, we are leaving Briseis behind to follow another story, always in the same world, always the characters that we know, but we are jumping a point of view. And I wonder if I'm gonna enjoy it, because actually I'm quite curious about this character and of what is prophetized to happen, or if I'm gonna miss Briseis overall. Let's see. I don't think I'm gonna miss her. I think I had enough time with her, so I'm hopeful for the other point of view, but we will see. Carry On, number 4. This is what I say, with an enjoyment list, because objectively Pat Barker with, you know, the Women of Troy, quality wise, discussion wise, and making me think wise, it is superior to almost all of those books that you're gonna see next. But yeah, enjoyment wise, overall, I did have, for example, more of a good time reading Carry On. Carry On is a story within a story. You start with Girl, Rainbow Rowell, which is a contemporary romance, and then in that story, in Fangirls, the main protagonist, she's writing a fanfic of Harry Potter. And now Rainbow Rowell said those characters that, you know, I created in Fangirls, they really stuck with me a lot, and I really felt like they needed their own story. So Carry On, that's it. It's, I believe, a trilogy or a quartet eventually. There are 3 books out now, and you follow Simon. Simon is the chosen one. He goes to a magic school, and he has a roommate, Buzz, who we cannot stand. They are enemies. They try to always kill each other, but the tension, it's not clear that it's only hate. There might be something else, because it seems like very much like an obsession, the one of Simon for Buzz and vice versa. This was a roller coaster ride. If I was to actually imagine a roller coaster, it would start, the experience of this book would start with me head down, screaming because I want to get off the ride. I really struggled with the first 150 pages. I did not like Simon's point of view, and I found his point of view quite jumbled up, quite difficult to follow at times, very cute and funny at times, but difficult to follow and a bit juvenile. And then, almost when I was about to give up and thought I'm too old for this, I don't connect, Buzz point of view starts, and he generally saved the day. And when Buzz came around, somehow even Simon's point of view became bearable. Ultimately, I think that what happened is that Buzz and Simon together, having very much their point of view back and forth, they are so lovely as characters, and they are very dynamic. It's something that I really loved to see, because I think she does the kind of enemies but obsessed with each other quite well. And even, you know, toward the end of the book, the kind of banter between Simon and Buzz, it keeps going. It doesn't disappear just because their relationships is different. And I really enjoyed that side of things. I think what made it lovely is just them, just following them. And it was also generally funny, especially Buzz's point of view, and when Fiona is around. And the numpties, I think they're called, I generally laughed out loud a couple of times. It is a story very much teenage angst and longing. Initially it was also like a bit like, this is nothing like Harry Potter. And then I had to put that aside, and I had to realize that it's not comparable to Harry Potter. It's not comparable to the world of magic that Rowling created. And it doesn't probably even tries to be. This is foremost a contemporary with a bit of magic love story, or also friendship story. And I think that if you really see this as just that, as I tried to do, then I enjoyed the ride, and it didn't take itself too seriously. To be fair, the fantasy plot, I think the elements of fantasy elements improve, especially the last 3 quarters, and navigating spoilers smoothly. I enjoyed the Simon origin bit. I think that was quite intriguing as a side of the plot. Sorry, I had to move down, and by the end I was really caring for these characters, to the point that I think I might check out the sequels. I've heard not the greatest things about the second book, but the third book has gone down well with the readers. And now that I am speaking about Carry On, and now that I'm down, so my Harry Potter shelf is here, and then I have this that I found in a shop in London, and it's for no one's birthday. I just thought it's just hilarious, so I've got it. So anyway, I forgave Rainbow Rowell for have a weak fantasy plot in this, because she made me care so much for the characters, and at the end of the day, making me care is not easily done, and the way she has done it so smoothly, making me also have like a lot of fun with her book and her story. I would argue that it's as important as having a strong fantasy plot, or if the aim is to just make me feel the cuteness of a story. She succeeded in that. So yeah, I will probably pick up the sequel. Let me know if you read the sequels. Are they worth picking up? At least is the banter and the cuteness ongoing? Because that's probably all I'm gonna look for in those books, if it makes sense. It's more like about seeing them and their friendship rather than just really caring about the actual plot. And number 3, I will put Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. This is, it says it's a novella, but it's around 165 pages long. For me, it's almost like a full-length book. But anyway, they call it a novella. Let's stick with it. And this is about a man who is traveling back because he needs to go and see some family. He's not very much looking forward to it, and while he's trying to buy some time, he needs a snack. So he stops at a rest stop on the highway, and all hell ensues. But I must say that, as any other book by Cassidy, the same happened with this one. Although to this day I've read just a couple of things by him, and overall I think Rest Stop worked the best between the two. I've read Mary by him, which I enjoyed, but I prefer the Rest Stop probably. So what happens with him is that I adore his writing. His writing captures my attention, it makes me laugh, it makes me think. I found this very witty and clever. So I'm there with him, and I am there with him along the whole ride. I read these one evening in one go. And that in itself for me is a praise, because it's rare for me to just sit and read for a couple hours without any interruption. So the writing, check. The oh hell no factor, checked, because oh hell no of this really happening. Plot ideas, also check. I liked the idea of a plot. When I sat back and thought, okay, this is his plot, actually I found it quite original, as Mary, for example, by him was. So that's also check. What doesn't completely check, I can't fully check, it's the way his plot at times develop. It's not overall, it's not a critique of everything he does in the development of a plot is awful. Something don't gel well together though. And here it's the same. I'm trying again to be as spoiler free as possible, but there is a first side of the story that involves some animals, and then there is another side of the story involving a mask. I'm just gonna put it there. And I thought the two things were quite disjointed. So I would have preferred this story if it was, you know, just running with the animal side of things, or if it was just running with the mask thing. But he tried to be both, and they just didn't glue well, in my opinion. That's to say, I was still curious. I still read with this because I wanted to know what happened. But sitting back after, I was like, oh, I wonder why he did this mashup of things. Ultimately though, this is supposed to be a fever dream, and I think he succeeds in being that. It is mad. It's just a mad, very chilling to your bones adventure, series of events, I would say, more than adventure, because it's definitely something that our main protagonist didn't sign up for. And so it is bizarre, and it's definitely suggested, something I would suggest, because I think there is it's a lot of entertainment and grossness. And number 2, I need to put Annihilation. This is my first book by the author. I love this cover. It's a little bit of like something that I just want to share with you. This is a 10th anniversary edition. So Annihilation, it's the story of these 4 women, I think it's 4 of them or 5 of them, that enter Area X, an area that has developed, has appeared out of the blue a bunch of years back, and it's a place where a lot of expeditions have gone in before to try and understand what it was. Is it alien? Is it like a natural variation of nature? What is going on there? We don't know. It's an area that appears and starts to expand, and all the other expeditions either have been lost, or when they came back they were never the same. And now you follow these 5 women, I want to say 5 women going in. They're never named, they're all given a name based on their job description. So we follow the biologists, these are our protagonists. They go in to try and, yeah, it's another expedition trying to figure out what Area X stands for. This is the first audiobook I've tried to listen to this year, and as I was maybe like 45 minutes into the audiobook, I was like, nope, I need to purchase a copy and read this in a physical format, because the story has the kind of essence and very whimsical, almost mysterious prose that I think I need to read on page. Audiobook while doing something else, I won't be able to keep up with this, and I think it was the right choice for me. I then proceeded to purchase the book. I reread the first 45 minutes, translating to pages, and continued on, and overall I enjoyed Annihilation, and I'm surprised that I did, because it's not my kind of horror. It's not my kind of story in general, because of it's a lot of the things that happen are very much open to your interpretation. There is a lot of meaning that you can take out of these, or you can just, you know, follow the story as weird, odd things happening after the other. And I really enjoyed also like the characters in their unlikeliness. So for example, we have a psychologist, which by the way is she doesn't sound like a psychologist. She was basically a hypnotist, and I really enjoyed her character because she's definitely the most starkly ambiguous character, but the way she operates and she uses her hypnotist powers. By the way, psychologists can't hypnotize you, just you know. So although there is inaccuracy about what a psychologist actually does, her powers, the way she uses it to influence emotions rather than just actions, I thought that was quite clever, because that's what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's our actions that are a lot of times dictated by our emotions. And so the fact that she would influence your emotions, not just your actions, it made it so more evil to do. While I was describing, Rest Stop as a fever dream, I would say that this has the same fever dream vibe. It's a completely different story, completely different experience, but it's still very much you are in a dream where you don't exactly know what's happening. We follow the point of view of a biologist, as I said, and she writes in first person, and I found some of her comments on life, they really struck a chord with me. She talks about changes and how, some changes are irreversible, and it really connected with me. Like, she was talking about human emotion and human relationships, and I found her introspection into her own humanity and, of relationships between humans and the world. It made me really think about life in general, and I really love when an author with his prose and his characters can transport me into like a fever dream where horrific things are happening, I don't know what's happening, but at the same time the meanings I can take out of that fantastical story, they're still very much applicable to everyday life. So I really appreciated this prose. I called a couple of things that were gonna happen. However, even having called them, I think I found those things still clever, still like, oh, actually this is a nice twist, or this is a nice thing to have come out of this. So it didn't make it as an unpleasant experience to then having to, follow the consequence of something I'd called for. Ultimately though, why I think this is not my best read of the month, and I don't know if it's gonna make it into the best of the years. Probably, objectively, as I think right now, no. Is that because this is all atmosphere and very little substance. The substance is very much open to your interpretation, and I did not know until the end or which ratio of atmosphere and actual substance we would have at the end. And so I kept waiting for the ratio of, okay, more substance, less atmosphere to shift and even out, and they never do. So although, because I was waiting for it, I kept reading and I was very much into the story, at any point I didn't find myself bored or anything, when I sat back at the end though, I was like, okay, but where is the actual substance of it? Where are the actual answers? And I know that this is a quartet, so probably I might get answers in the rest of the books, but I also need to judge a book standing on its own, right? I also am not a fan, I'm gonna keep my finger crossed because it might be considered a bit of a spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler, but I'm just gonna say I'm not the biggest fan of history repeating itself. So again, very entertaining to follow this until it happens, and then I was like, oh, okay, this history repeats itself situation now. And I am curious though to read the sequels. If you read the sequels, are they as good? Are we getting a bit more answers? I'm happy with, again, being a fever dream, but do we get somewhere at one point? Or it's still very much open to our interpretations? And if it is, I might be okay knowing and still deciding to go into it with those expectations. But yeah, let me know without spoiling anything what you think about the rest of the series. And the reason why I'm saying about, I might be okay with just atmosphere as long as I know it's happening is because I watched the movie adaptation of these, which I would question very strongly how much adaptation this is. I think the director just took this vague idea and made it into something completely different, but the movie was very much substance, and I enjoyed having a visual representation of Area X. I thought that was very entertaining and curious, but I had a weird vibe with the movie because it was all substance, less atmosphere, and I almost liked it, but without associating to the book. Like, it felt like a different thing. It felt like there is Annihilation in the book, and then there is Annihilation in the movie, which is completely different. And I like them both, but I don't like one standing for each other. I don't know if it makes any sense. And then number one, a book that almost feels like cheating, putting it into my January 2025 wrap-up, because I have read the first 600 pages of this in December 2024, but alas, I did finish this in 2025, and so it needs to be here. And I'm talking about Assassin's Quest. This is the third and last book in the first trilogy by Robin Hobb in the elderly. Oh, that didn't come out right. Elderlings realm that she's created. And in the first book, when you start this story, which is a very much epic high fantasy coming of age assassin's fantasy, you follow Fitz, who is a bastard born from one of the princes of the kingdom, but then kind of given up by their mother, and is raised in their stables and very much ignored until the king actually decides that he is his blood at the end of the day and he can be useful. So the king decides to hire Fitz to do certain things on his behalf, and you really go from there. It's so much more than just what I just told you. It's clearly an epic high fantasy, but it's been such a journey following Fitz from when he was a little child to now being a full grown-up man in the third book. And listen, so the reason why this is 4.5 stars is because for a second that lasted around 150 pages, I found myself a bit bored by this, and I was like looking at this like, oh my god, I've got another 600 pages to go. It looked a bit daunting, but I was just a fool, a regular fool, not the cool fool that we get here. And I had not to worry, because after 200 pages mark, the things starts happening, the pace does go up a bit, or at least we engage with so many characters, so many beloved characters from the past and a few new ones that were quite intriguing, and my attention was then captured and kept for the rest of the 600 pages. And I knew that this story, while I was going through it, I knew it would sink its teeth into me and not let go. And I ended up loving this despite, technically speaking, on a few factors I should have not loved this much. First of all, this is very much a traveling fantasy, and I do not love traveling stories. I tend to get a bit bored where all they do is travel, and all they do in this book for the most part is travel, so I should have not loved this much. I must say that this is a slow-paced book, but it's a riveting slow pace, and I didn't know until I read Hobb that you could have a riveting story and a slow-paced story all together, and it could be no slow-paced riveting story. It's my first experience that I can remember over the last few years where a story is very, very slow, and yet I enjoy reading about them cooking their food so much. I enjoy reading them sitting around the campfire and just talking with each other and creating that relationship and making it more real. So therefore I will feel more of the stakes whenever something happens to any of those involved. And I can only say that the reason why it's happening and it's so effective is because of her prose. Extremely happy to follow them around through their epic moments and through their mundane tasks, because it was just everything for me was a delight to read. And at any point, there are some times where characters, I might just say, yeah, okay, I've read enough of you, now fuck off. And at any point, I wanted any of them to disappear, and I missed them all when they went. Apart from Starling, I think I never warmed up too much to Starling. But apart from her, all the others, I were like, oh, I wish I could spend another 600 pages with you. Fitz has been a very challenging and rewarding character to follow. I think his growth, it's without doubt outstanding, while at the same time there were moments in which Fitz would fall for the smallest silly things. He's quite gullible at times, and at times I'm like, Fitz, are you stupid? Do you see what's happening? How can you fall for that? So he made me think like I should just slap some sense into him, to him actually standing up and doing the right thing, not the nice thing, but doing the right thing, and in such a powerful way that at times I was in awe. At one point he's put in front of a very difficult choice where basically they're telling him that they're gonna do something he doesn't want them to do, and at the same time they request him to do something they need him to do on their behalf or with them. And he is clearly distraught that they are about to do something, that the thing that he doesn't want them to do, right? And yet he says, I'm gonna do what you request me to do, despite whether you're gonna do about the other thing I don't want you to do, and I'm gonna do it because it's the right thing to do. So although you are putting me in a position where you're doing something to me that I could blackmail you, I could say, well, if you want me to do that, don't do that. It doesn't do that. And I was in awe at that moment. I was like, every other character I can think of would have put a blackmail in there, and he doesn't do it, and he does so with such grace that even them are like, oh, well, maybe we won't do the other thing then, because you're so noble right now. And that is the moment where I think they knew that Fitz had their heart, and I knew that Fitz had mine. I was like, wow, Hob, this scene is so powerful. Hob really reminds me why I love reading epic high fantasy, why I feel the need now and then to pick up one. This is a story filled with flawed heroes and subtle, heinous villains that you wouldn't mind going to prison on a life sentence if only you had the chance to kill them with your bare hands. Stories with these epic journeys through the last breath battles, and with this heroic and noble principle behind, and magnificent beasts sprinkled throughout. So yeah, I am now gonna read all the realm of Elderling. Must say, overall, to conclude for today, I don't think this is a perfect trilogy. I think this book, as any of the other books in the series, has flaws. Despite my love for Fitz, as I said, he is sometimes dumb as a rock, and there are a few things that were a bit heavy-handed, especially when it comes down to some prophecies. I think they're a bit too much in your face. But I also remind myself this is one of the earliest works by Hope, and if she can do this at the very beginning of her career, or at least what I understand as being, you know, one of her first trilogies, I can only see then a bright, blinding future for what she might have written afterward, and how much she might have grown as an author if this is the standard we begin with. Guys, that's all I've read in January. Let me know your favorite and your least favorite read of the month of January. If you're new, I would love for you to stick around, see what other silly mug I can come up with. So subscribe, chat with me in the comments down below if you want to. Would love to hear from you. I'll see you next time. Take care. Ciao.